Hello, I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, and welcome to my show, The Woman's Connection. The Woman's Connection is a program about women and obstacles and challenges that they've had in their lives, some of them life-threatening. Sometimes challenges that arise in one's family are enough to make one soar, and soar our next guest did. Married in 1938 in the pre-stages of World War II to a pilot, she only dreamt of a simple life, couple's children, and a home with a white picket fence. Never in her wildest dreams did she ever think she would have an active role in the Club 99. Let us welcome Doris Brell and find out what exactly is the 99 Club and how her life evolved. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Barrie.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And come. What exactly is the 99 Club?
Well, it actually is an organization. It's the 99's organization of licensed women pilots. And it was started in 1929, and we had, as our first president, was Amelia Earhart.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
You're also today the first woman on the board of the College of Aeronautics.
Mm-hmm. The first woman trustee.
Oh, trustee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. That's even better.
Well, it's the same, I think.
Oh. A far cry from what you originally thought about when you got married. What was life like in 1938 when you first married Henry Renninger, a pilot?
Well, our life was a little different, I think, than most people that walk down the aisle. He sent me a telegram. He was flying in Florida, and he sent me a telegram. I arrived at college to marry him now and come to Honduras in the spring. And I took the telegram home to Mother and said, "Can I?" And she said, "Doris, you're going to have to make this decision yourself." And we were married, and he did go off in a week, and several months later I was able to follow him to Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua.
Wow.
And from there, a little one was coming along, so I went home to Mother. There was no place to have a baby delivered, I must admit.
That must have been pretty rustic in those days.
It was different, but it was lovely. I mean, I was young. I was 18 and 19, and it was fun.
That is exciting. Then you had another child during the war? Or?
Yes, right toward the end of the war, 1945.
And what happened after the war?
Well, Henry came back from the Air Force, and he and some of the men that he had met during World War II, they decided to start a cargo airline. And it took a while, but they did. They put together Seaboard Western Airlines. It went on to be Seaboard World. It went on to merge with Flying Tigers, and at the present time, it's now merged with Federal Express.
That's quite a history.
It is. It took a number of years, but that's what's happened.
In the 1940s and 1950s, Henry started to have back problems.
Yeah,
that changed your life?
Yes, it changed our whole family life, really. He started to lose the use of his legs. We didn't know why. He had an operation on his spine, and supposedly he was going to be all right. And then a year and a half later, he had another operation, and eventually was in a wheelchair, in and out of hospitals. And yet our family life went along because he was Henry. He never changed, even though he's paralyzed from here down. He was always Henry, and I mean, his head was there, and his spirit and his courage. So
that put a strain on you. You were a young woman at that time,
well,
newly married, considering.
Yes, I don't know. You just take each day as it comes and hope for the best, and I think that's how we came through our life. I was lucky that Mother could be with us a number of times. That when the kids were going to school and I was driving him to work, because he couldn't drive any longer. But I think love and all, it kind of carries you along.
It certainly does carry people a long ways. And it looks like from things we've been talking about prior that it's a wonderful, loving relationship, marriage.
Yes, it was. I lost him in 1980, but he fought hard and he fought long.
Well, what happened? Henry took early retirement in Florida?
Well, actually, our friends in Seaboard, they decided Henry should go south for 6 months, so we took the children out of the school, and we drove on down, and supposedly at Fort Myers Beach, we were going to get him in the water, manipulate his legs, and hope that that was going to help him. That was after the back operation. And all I know is that we had a convertible at that time, and we drove over to Page Field, where he used to fly. And he came out, I'm sitting out in a convertible like this, you know, get sunburned, get sunburned. Not like today. And he came out of the hangar, and he had this man with him, and my daughter, because at that time he was walking with a cane and holding on to the side. And he brought out Buck Criddleball. And Buck Criddleball is going to teach you to fly.
How nice.
Well, it sounds nice now, once I fell in love with it, but at that time I'm saying, oh no, I'm not.
How long did it take them to?
Well, I finally said, I'll try it. I'll give you 5 hours, and if I like it, I'll continue, and if I don't like it, he says, fair enough. And in 5 hours and 45 minutes, I soloed, so.
Wow.
Well, I don't know that that's unusual, but in those days, we didn't have that much traffic, and being down at Fort Myers and big old airport that they had used, you know, during the war, it worked, or I guess they hadn't had the war yet, whatever. I did enjoy it. I did take off, and I did get my license in the 6 months we were there.
What was everybody's attitude towards you being a pilot? I mean, this is basically a man's world.
Well, this was in 1955 when I finally got my license. And we came back to New York, and we bought a little airplane, a little tri-pacer, Piper tri-pacer. And what I found that when I step out of my airplane and come over to the office, and there'd be men there, and they'd say, you fly? And this one man, actually, he said, well, if you can fly, I'm going to try. I know I can try if you can fly. So I really didn't have any, I mean, I wasn't in any kind of a work that I could have had competition. I think, actually, it was keeping Henry in the air, really, that I was doing. I always said I had the license, but he had the experience.
Well, it's a good team. And you traveled all over the country with us?
Well, we did some traveling, yes, with our little pacer.
How many women pilots were registered at that time?
Well, I wished I could tell you, but I really don't know. And I actually don't know how many today, but I know they're in the thousands. And
how did you feel about yourself at that point in time when you were doing this?
Well, when I soloed, I thought, I hope they knew what they were doing, letting me go up there. But once I was flying, I felt very confident. I kept studying and certainly working with the instructors there at Zahns Airport. That was out on Long Island. So,
what was your family's attitude about you taking up flying?
Well, they were very proud of me. My the first person to go up in an airplane with me after I got my license down in Florida was my little boy.
Oh.
So he's sitting there, and we go out to the beach and wave the wing like this and wave to people, and he thought that was great.
How old was he at that point?
Well, he was born in 45, and I guess he was about 8 or 9.
That must have been really trying for you. You said your mother was helping you, you were a pilot, you were taking care of Henry, who was an invalid, and his situation was deteriorating as the time went on.
Yes, it did. Through the years, it really did. It was sad. He eventually was in the VA hospital up in the Bronx. And until then, I would be always at the hospital with him. And where I was very lucky, I hadn't worked except as a mother and a wife, and certainly a nurse companion. When he was in the VA hospital, I had the opportunity. This is kind of going from 1938 to 1975, but I had the opportunity to go to work as the manager of the Wings Club here in New York.
Ah, that's exciting. Now, through that, well, wait a minute, let's back up a minute here. Henry encouraged you, and in 1963, you went on to something else.
Oh, I sure did. And that, again, was a challenge, only I didn't say, no, I'm not going to do it. I had friends that they were going off to a helicopter society convention in Dallas, Texas, and this one man called me and he said, Doris, we need a gimmick whether Grandma can learn to fly a helicopter while the aviation space ride is going on in Dallas, Texas. And I said, I don't even know the name of the controls. What are you talking about? He said, oh, you can learn that easy. And Bell Helicopter agreed to, if I would solo the helicopter during this time, that they would let me try to do it. But not just to bring it up and hover it, but this was to take it off and bring it around and land it.
You're brave. I've been in a helicopter. I'm not happy with helicopters.
A lot of people feel that way, but I liked it.
Now you have some pictures here?
Yes, I have some pictures when I soloed the helicopter. Would you like me to?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, this is down at Bell Helicopter. It's the 47G3B. If I'm holding it correctly, that's all right?
Yep.
And then I went on down to the Brantley factory, and I soloed a Brantley. So actually I came back home and I got my license on a Brantley. And after having flown a Bell, that was when I came home and I started to fly the Brantley, and every time I'd lift it up, it'd go like this. And I'd said, I bet you wonder why they let me solo a Bell. And my instructor said, no, Doris, he said, that's like driving a Cadillac, and this is like a Volkswagen. Made me feel better. Anyway.
Right.
And then I have a photograph of Gene Hickey. He was my instructor, and that's in the
Tilton Ford.
That again is in the Brantley, and that was up at Westchester. And this is Oscar Backey, who is gone now. He was the Eastern Region Director, and Mr. Brantley, and that's getting my license. And oh, by the way, when you get helicopter rating, and you join an organization called the Whirly Girls.
The Whirly Girls.
Yes, so I'm Whirly Girl number 59.
That's wonderful.
And at least I know how many of those. There are over 800 now. I did this in '63.
And you were the first woman pilot of a helicopter in the state of New York. Mm-hmm. Well, that must have made you feel wonderful.
Well, yes, it did. Yes, it did.
I remember one time when I was dating somebody who had a plane, and we would go up and around, and then one day he said, okay, you can take the controls as we're lifting off, and I take the controls, and I froze. And he's yelling at me, pull back, and I am in a state of shock, frozen, petrified, and that was the last time I ever tried to fly a plane. It was quite an experience, but I loved going in the little planes.
Well, it would have been nice if he'd had you up in the air, you know, like 5,000 or 6,000 feet, and then let you pull back slowly and see how the nose comes up, and instead of so near the ground. You might have stalled out.
Right, right. Well, he was getting a little panicky, but that's okay. Now then Henry got you involved in the 99 Club, and that took you to new heights.
Well, when you do get your license, and I did find out there were 99s, that there was an organization such as that. Oh, and by the way, people say, well, what are the 99ers?
I was just going to ask you.
And you don't call them 99ers, but there were 99 charter members.
Ah.
So that's how the organization received its name.
Well, that's nice.
So, but when we did come back, and they did find that some of the ladies at the airport found out that I had a rating. They said, well, why don't you join the 99s? So I did, and got very active in it, and I think it gave me an outlet when Carl was, that's the next one, when Henry was sick. We would arrange that I could go off to the international conventions and go to the section meetings and meet other women pilots and get involved with the Powder Puff Derby, which was a transcontinental race.
You actually did the race?
I didn't get to do that. My mother got very ill after I'd entered one time, and my sister swore it was because she thought Mother was worried about me.
Well, that's always a possibility.
I'm afraid it was. But no, but I always helped at the terminus if it was in our area, or the start. So again, it was very interesting, and I was so proud of some of those ladies and what they did.
I think that's great, breaking new ground, and it's before women, when we were only supposed to stay home and have children and keep the house, and that was it. And
well, that's the way it started out in '38, and you know, in the early days of.
Well, it's even that way, let's see, I think up until the 70s. People said a woman's place is in the home. Well, house in the Senate, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
But that really gave you quite an outlet, because you had so much strife and so much tension and stress at home with Henry's illness.
Oh, yes, it was, I don't know, I guess I just did each thing I had to do, and I never thought much about it, Barry. For him to be comfortable, for him to, I don't know, you just, he's your husband, you want to take care of him.
Right.
So.
And somebody you love. And
Absolutely.
how did your children adjust at this time?
I think they just took it for granted. I mean, they went on to school, and I told my son, no matter what, you're going to go to college. Of course, my daughter did like I did and got married at 19, so that was fun. That was nice.
Did any of the children follow in your footsteps?
Well, Charlene went off to college like I had done, and she started flying before she left Long Island. And it was funny. I think Henry sort of, well, he liked to see a little competition, and so she soloed in 5 hours, in 15 minutes, I think. So he told her, he said, but your mother soloed a tail dragger, which meant, you know, it had two wheels and the tail hung down. And she was on a tricycle landing gear, and so that's easier. So the next day she went out, and they put her in a cub or an Aranca, and she soloed that. So she beat me.
She beat you.
Yeah.
Well, that is great. Does she still fly today? Or?
No, she got into horses when her husband got her into horses. So
a little different. Do you do any flying today?
Well, not very much. If the 99s meet and someone's got a seat in an airplane, that's about. I haven't kept my flying up, because getting on with my life, when I lost Henry, I ran into one of the men that was his friend and one of the founders of Seaboard, and he had lost his wife, and the next thing, our kids were like, well, his daughter said, well, now that Mrs. Renninger, she's very nice, and you're not going to last the way you are, Dad. And my daughter's telling my friends, I wish my mother would remarry.
That's lovely.
And I know the perfect man for her.
Oh, that's even better.
So that was Carl, and that eventually happened.
Well, that's nice that both sides of the family were so much for you to remarry, and it showed that they had a strong, positive feeling about the family life.
Yes, well, they had known each other. We'd all known each other since World War II. And the children had known each other, and we just had grown apart as Henry had been ill, and we'd moved further into the city. So how
did you run into him?
Through something to do with flying, the Air Force Association, actually. So it wasn't long.
That was a short romance?
Well, yes, very short. We went to a reunion of Seaboard people, and we went on up to Essex, two friends that had been public relations. The man had been the public relations to Seaboard, and they invited us to stay over. And because we had been at this reunion, I had my suitcase, he had his suitcase, and we went out to get them, and he opened the trunk, and I reached in, and we came out sort of with our arms around each other.
I think that's great.
I'd hate to tell you what he said, but it was so cute. He was saying,
share it if you want.
He was saying, you turned me on. Here we are, like 65 or 66-year-old kids.
Oh, that's great.
And so we stood outside there in Connecticut, and it was October the 9th. It was my mother's birthday. She had died the year before. And but the weather was, you know,
pretty nice,
like yesterday. And well, anyway, we had arms around each other. We just stood out there and talked, and we decided we would get married in November on Thanksgiving when all the kids could come.
Oh, is that lovely?
So, can you imagine?
Boy, oh boy. I think that's quite remarkable.
Well, no, it was romantic.
You're right. That's the better way to say it. It was very romantic. Were people surprised that you had decided so quickly?
Well,
they said finally?
No, our family, when we talked to the children, they were delighted, which was nice. And then it was over a weekend, like a Labor Day week. No, it wasn't in October. But when I called into my office and I'm on my way in, anything happening, so to speak, and I said, I have something to tell you. I walked in, because they were saying, what? And I said, I have something to tell you. And so I walked in, I said, I'm in love, I'm going to get married. And they had seen the several years that I had gone through with Henry dying and the sadness, and yet being at the Wings Club and surrounded with people, it helped me a great deal. I was very lucky. You were.
I mean, it's very traumatic to lose somebody. I think women adjust better than men, because I know when my mother died before my father had a very difficult time. But through the Wings Club, you met a lot of interesting people?
I should say, I said they should let me pay them instead of them paying me. It's, again, it's an aviation club, and they have monthly luncheons, and so they have speakers that come, aviation speakers. They have an annual dinner that they put on. And so this brings people in aviation, and if you like people in aviation, if you're a hero worshiper like I was, I got to meet Mrs. Lindbergh.
I think you have some pictures?
I have a picture of Mrs. Lindbergh, and she was so lovely. Here she is at the Wings Club.
Wait a minute, we're gonna...
Why don't you show them?
Oh, all right. This is Mrs. Lindbergh. What year was this one in?
Well, it's a number of years ago. I would say about in the late 70s or early 80s.
Uh-huh. And you've got some others here?
Oh, yes. Guess who that is?
Which one?
That's Neil Armstrong.
This one here?
I was so thrilled to meet him. The first man on the moon, can you imagine?
Oh, wow. Oh, well, now, let me ask you, was this part of the Wings Club, or?
Well, that was a party that some people had, and Mayor Koch came in, and I was under the mistletoe. So I even have his autograph.
That's great. Now, oh, you've got, now this is, let's see.
Now that's Carl, and the night that Carl brought my ring to me at an annual dinner, and that's Barry Goldwater. I told him I needed something to prove we were engaged, and I said, do you have an old cigar band or something? And he brought a blue sapphire.
Oh, lovely. How nice. Now, we've got some other pictures that we didn't show here on.
Well, we were talking about Henry and my daughter, and that's when she was married, and she and her husband were going on their honeymoon, and that's Henry in a wheelchair.
Now, this is...
And then when Flying Tigers got a new airplane, they asked if they could put Henry's name on it, and I was so thrilled. So we had a dedication, and that was, his name was W. Henry Renninger, and it's still flying in the fleet with FedEx.
That is great.
I was so proud that day.
I can imagine. Oh, that's a lovely memento, though.
It is.
It is just... Now, how does your life change being married to Carl? I mean...
Well, I continued to work for about a year, but he lives out in Huntington. He had a home in Huntington. I had an apartment in Whitestone, and he didn't really like being in an apartment, so we gave that up in about a year. By the time that I told him that I thought I should resign and go back to being a housewife, and I said I would stay until we found someone to take my place, and actually it went on to about nearly a year before...
well, you're a tough act to follow, that's all.
Oh, well, we've got a wonderful lady there now, Margie Gewirtz, and I think you met her the other day when we were up together. And she's doing a fabulous job, and the club's ticking along. You know, you're expendable.
Yeah, unfortunately, we all are, but you still, you know, it's wonderful that you're still involved with the Wings Club, and you still meet a lot of interesting people. Wasn't it, who was at your dinner who gave the keynote speech?
Crandall.
Crandall, okay, from American Airlines.
President, CEO, yeah, Bob Crandall.
Now, what do you do these days besides, well, I'm sure you're not one to sit home and just watch the clock go by.
Well, look what I'm doing tonight. Who knows that I would ever be coming into New York City and talking to you on television. No, once I was married, Carl had me take up golf. So I've learned to play golf, and I'm enjoying that. I help at different things out, you know, out in Huntington. And I'm still on the board at the Wings Club. I'm still a trustee at the College of Aeronautics. And just sort of taking care of the house and taking care of Carl, and he brought his business home, and as I said, it's all over the house. And I'm learning to use a computer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Yeah. Now, which do you find more challenging, the computer or golf?
Oh, that's a good question.
I find them both.
Well, the golf, so it's there and I'll do better tomorrow, but when that computer makes up it's mine, it messes me up. But I'm learning.
I think it's wonderful. I love computers, except the other day I almost had a major heart attack when my whole drive went. So it took somebody 2 hours to get it back, so I think I'll stick with golf and forget about the computers. I mean, when you make a mistake in golf, it's one thing.
Yeah, just your score.
Right. And like you say, tomorrow is another day. Now, what kind of plans do you have for the future?
Well, I don't know. At our age, I think we'll have to think about something, I don't know, go someplace where you can plant and play golf and swim and fish more often than you can on Long Island, you know, with the winters coming. But we were looking around in Florida last week, and my husband came back and he says, "I don't like Florida, it's too flat." But he came from Minnesota, as a, you know, grew up in Minnesota, and he's lived here on Long Island, as we both have, since the late 40s. And where we are is so beautiful. Well, Long Island, many spots are there, are so beautiful.
And nice golf courses.
And it's kind of hard to think of giving it up.
Well, have two residents, you know, flip back and forth. That's always nice, you know, win the lotto.
I'm having trouble
else.
dusting as it is.
Oh, that is a problem. I mean, in living in New York, you dust every day, morning and night, and it's like never goes away.
Oh, right.
Did your son take up anything to do with flying?
Well, Rennie, yes, he learned to fly and got his own airplane too. But he did that while he was in the Air Force, and because of his eyes, he wasn't a pilot. But he went on to get his pilot's rating, and so did his wife. And but I'm very proud of him. He's just retired January the 27th of this year.
My birthday.
Oh, that was Henry's birthday.
Oh, my goodness.
He retired on his birthday, and out at Vandenberg Air Force Base out in California, and after 26 years in the Air Force, and he retired a full colonel.
How marvelous.
So I can, you know, I'll give him a big pat on the back.
Well, now we got to get your grandchildren in the air on the space shuttle.
Talk about grandchildren. I can brag, even have two great-grandchildren.
Two great-grand?
Two little boys, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Oh, how marvelous.
My grandson has a little boy, Christian Thomas, and my granddaughter has a little boy, Christopher Robin, like the book, like Winnie the Pooh.
You're going to have to send them to space camp. I went to space camp.
Did you?
It's fabulous. It was wonderful, and it was during the Hubble mission. It's a repair mission. So we were just up practically around the clock, and it was a fabulous week. And
I'm
kids
so
should go
glad they repaired that, the information that's coming back from that.
Well, I'm so sorry that I'm so young or old, depends on how you look at it, that I won't be able to get on the space shuttle. Maybe they'll have grandparents or senior citizens by the time that they have.
Maybe so.
I'd love to go.
I get to go half fair on a lot of things. That's the only one good thing, getting a little older.
In the closing moments of the show, what advice would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, thinking back, Barry, I just remember what Henry went through, and I wondered, you know, as we've talked, how did I react to it and keep going? We never, either one of us, felt, why me? Why is this happening to us? But I think if you can take each thing as it comes, each day as it comes, and if you have a lot of love.
And a positive attitude. I mean, that's...
Well, I think I did. I think I do.
I think so also. I think your attitude is marvelous. To hear what you've gone through, I mean, the stress and the strain.
And the illness, to see him so ill. But again, I feel very lucky. I had my family, I had my mother, and I had Henry. I mean, even though he was paralyzed, he was Henry. Oh, well. I never thought of the word paraplegic with him.
Well, that's marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us today, Doris. It's been a pleasure to having you. And when your troubles are down, just think of how you can soar to new heights with a positive attitude. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next show. Do write, though, and let me know about your stories. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.